So, Acho, will the Nets experiment work?
No, the Nets experiment will not work, particularly if work means win a championship. Marcellus, somebody has to explain to me how you're going to add three problems together and hope for a solution. Somebody got to explain to me how in the world are you going to take a problem, James Harden in Houston, a problem Kevin Durant with Draymond Green in Golden State, and a problem Kyrie Irving in Boston and in Cleveland, combine all three of those problems together and hope for a solution. I'm reminded of middle school. I'm sure we've all been there. Remember when you would get kicked out of class and you'd have to go to after-school detention?
Hold on. You assume everybody got kicked out of class. I never got kicked out of class.
At one point in time. We all at one point in time, we got kicked out of class and we had to go to detention. When you go to detention, Marcellus, what happens? You are in a congregation of a bunch of people that got kicked out of class. You're in a group of a whole bunch of troublemakers.
Standards.
So while one class can survive with the class clown and another class can survive with the class clown, you want to know what happens when you go to after-school detention and it ain't nothing but a whole bunch of class clowns?
Tell me, Acho.
Pure and utter chaos. All the Brooklyn Nets are about to be is a whole bunch of cats that got kicked out of class, spending time together in detention. This Brooklyn Nets team will not work because you cannot combine several problems together and miraculously think you're going to get a solution.
You had a take about the NBA and a team that's going to win the East, potentially win the entire NBA championship based off a great line that you had. KD's a problem? If that's a problem, that's a good problem to have. You want to talk about this is a detention. This is it's a detention for the NBA. Every team you're going to name, I got the counter for it. But let me talk about this as a real take, not just as a poetic wax that you just tried to do right there. That was crazy. Anyway, all right, I'm all in on this team in the East. You know, in the West, it's Lakers and Clippers, and it's really Clippers and Lakers, but I got to respect the champions. But the East is right, big dog. And the champs are ripe for the picking as well. East, not as dominant. Be real. The East was not looking like it was going to be a dominant conference. Whoever you want to list up there, let's go. Miami, Boston, Philly, Milwaukee. I will counter every one of those. But let's talk about the champs. Let's start from the top down.
Please.
When you look at the Brooklyn Nets and their big three, now you look at the Lakers, who had a championship roster already because they just won a championship, and they improved in some respects, talking about that same championship roster. But I must remind people that they were a vulnerable champion. Of the 18 champions that have now played in the new series format, which is 4 straight series of 7 games, the Lakers allowed the most points per game, highest opponent's field goal percentage, and highest opponent's three-point percentage. Wait a minute, that means they kind of struggle on defense. And now they're going to see a big three of KD, Kyrie, and now James Harden. Woo, you talking about hitting them where it hurts. That's where this big three can go and hit them where it hurts. Let's talk about the offense. Simple. This is my simple layers. There's going to be 3 guys on the court at one time that if you look at them in combined scoring average will be 90 points a game. That is if James Harden comes back to form, 34 points a game.
Or if Kyrie comes back.
Or if Kyrie comes back at all. Hey, I'm laughing with you, brother. Where you at, Kyrie? What the hell? You trying to solve the world. You better solve your job. Okay, top 3 scorers on the other teams in the East.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're talking about a team that has 90, right? Brooklyn Nets. Where the Celtics combined? 65. Bucks, 63. We're talking about their stars. 76ers, 62. Heat, 50. Uh-oh. Wait a minute. So in a world where we all know, and you even quoted this when you were trying to take a stab and jab at Nick Saban, that you got to go offensive-minded. Who's going to be able to keep up with this scoring trio? My last point is, when you try to look at the defenses that are going to try and stop and counter this offensive trio, who's going to guard all 3? Your third defender is going to be stuck with who? Kyrie or James Harden with shooters everywhere, with spacing everywhere. Bruh, it's going to be a problem this year for everybody.
I like your take, but the problem with your take is you are only looking on the court, and you're only looking on the names on the back of the jersey. Let's look above the court.
Beyond the game?
Let's look well, because I think the mind controls the body, both in sports and in life.
Of course.
So let's look beyond the talent itself.
Okay.
Let's talk about the mind. Marcellus, give me team plus talent over talent any day.
Team plus talent.
See, team plus talent to me is greater than talent. Give me a talented team, accumulation of individuals. I'm going to bring up this point because our true basketball heads will remember it. I brought it up yesterday on the surface level, but I'm going to dive in. Let's go a little bit deeper, not wider. 2004, the greatest basketball upset in the finals in the last 30 years. The Detroit Pistons, they upset the L.A. Lakers. Chauncey Billups, big shot. They asked him afterwards, they said, hey, Chauncey, do you really think you should have beat that Lakers team? He said this, judging by names on the back of the jersey, we should have been swept. Who? Chauncey Billups, big shot. He said, judging by the names on the back of the jersey, we should have been swept. Well, then, Chauncey Billups, why weren't you swept? I'll let him tell it in his words. He said this, we played to their psyche. He said the Lakers had already won 3 chips, and Shaq had won 3 finals MVPs in a row. So what we said was this, Kobe's not only going to want to win, the late, great Kobe Bryant is going to want to win and win a finals MVP. So what was the approach? He said the approach was simple. Double Kobe, single Shaq, get Shaq frustrated. He said because they had more talent, but we had a better team. So many people, and you, including you thus far, coming out with the takes of Kevin Durant's talented, James Harden is talented, Kyrie Irving is talented.
More than talented.
Duh. Can't nobody dispute the talent of it all, but just because you get a bunch of great pieces together does not mean you're going to have a perfect puzzle. Okay. I could go grab a whole bunch of pieces. I could grab some of the best musical compositions ever. I could grab some of the best artwork ever. But if we throw that all together, does not mean we're going to have a great picture or a great composition in totality. So yes, KD is great, and yes, Kyrie is great, and yes, James Harden are great, but that does not mean they all going to be great together. I don't believe so.
Well, that's the interesting conversation I would like to have, which is talent and chemistry, that competition, right? Because we know that this team, if it's going to really realize its goals, 2 things have to happen. Either they have to be greater than a sum of its parts, or
talk about it.
They're going to have to out-talent chemistry.
Can you?
Hey, hold on. Can you? Okay, here's some names. I don't know about the chemistry issues in detail, but on the surface, there were some issues. The Miami Heat, when they had their big 3, did they out-talent the chemistry? They won 2 of the 4 championships together.
They didn't.
They didn't win 2 or 4?
No. They didn't out-talent the chemistry. Can we go there or you want to keep going?
I want to keep going.
Go ahead.
Damn, you mean. Okay. Okay. What about the Warriors? Steph, Clay, KD, Draymond, whatever you want to call that. That makes big 3, big 4. Cavs with LeBron, Kyrie, Kevin Love. That surprise. Bird, Parrish, McHale. Let's go back. Magic, Kareem, Worthy, Duncan, Parker, Ginobili. The point is, there's a lot of different configurations of what the chemistry looked like for those teams, right? But those are all successful big 3s that when meshed together or when seen from afar before we knew what they actually did in resume and performance, there were question marks. You're like, I don't know how that's going to fit. I remember when KD went to Golden State, the first thing was, oh, that's a punk move, which I hated hearing. But the second thing was, well, who's going to be the man? I was like, you know who's going to be the man? The best player. Because guess what? We all are players. When we get on the field, the media speculates. We know the answer. When we get out there, like, oh, he buckets. Oh, he's buckets too, but not the same. And that all figures itself out in natural selection. Man, I just don't see how this can go wrong unless Kyrie just doesn't want to show up.
We about to have a conversation that other shows I don't know are capable of having, because you asked one of the greatest questions I've heard maybe ever in sports. Can you out-talent chemistry? That's what this whole thing comes down to, big dog. Can you out-talent chemistry?
Hell yeah, you can.
I'm not convinced you can. Let's talk about that Heat team. The first year the Heat lost the finals, they lost to the Dallas Mavericks. Now, on paper, Miami Heat, LeBron James in his prime of all primes, 26 years old, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh. That is a more talented team than Dirk Nowitzki, Jason Kidd, Jason Carey, Tyson Chandler.
No doubt
argument. About it. I'm from Dallas, so I watched all the Mavericks games. That Heat team is a more talented team. But ask anybody, any basketball head, that first year, LeBron kind of deferred to D-Wade.
That's
You're going
what the
to Miami.
was.
D-Wade is your team. You're kind of as good as me. Not really, but like the world has let you believe that you're as good as me. So there were chemistry issues. Now, obviously, anybody watching would say LeBron choked in that finals. We get all that. But beyond the play on the court, there were chemistry issues. That team, the sum of the Mavericks' parts beat the Miami Heat. When the Heat lost again, they lost to one of the greatest team organizations in NBA history, Greg Popovich and them Spurs. The Spurs, you could argue maybe were as talented.
Duncan still had that thing going, but I
like 30, still like
18-foot banks.
Maybe, but I'll give it to you like this. Let's go sports. I love when the fans can get in with us.
Okay.
When I was in Philly, Chip Kelly really loved the Spurs, and because they were the epitome of a team. We would watch cut-ups of how many times they would pass the ball before they got a bucket, because that was the epitome of chemistry beating talent and talent on a roster. Team beating talent. Go back to 04 Pistons, greatest upset last 30 years as far as the finals. That was the epitome of team beating talent. There's a quote. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
I love that quote.
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. I would always say team and talent beats talent when talent lives exclusively. So give me Marcellus and Anthony Davis plus LeBron James plus a team organization and organizational structure before you just give me a bunch of talented individuals, big dog.
See, but it's not mutually exclusive.
It's not.
They borrow from each column. Like, there's not another team as talented, top-heavy than this team, right? If Kyrie shows up. Nobody's more talented than them. Okay. So they already have that advantage. But in perception, we think they have a disadvantage in chemistry. But they're going to meet somewhere in the middle. They're going to meet somewhere where that's going to be their performance level in average. Now, is that performance level going to be great enough to beat the teams in the East? Let's talk about Boston. They got the bodies to match up, especially in small lineups, but a lot of one-way rotational players. How are they going to do it when the courts get shrunk, or you also just say, hey, let's forget about it. Let's just go out-talent Boston. Did Boston make it to the finals last year? Okay, whatever. All right, Philadelphia. Man, they've been sputtering, trying to figure out their formula for a long time, despite their talent levels. They look better this year. It looks like it's agreeing. I don't know what's going to happen. Can you really rely on Joel Embiid the entire stretch? We'll see, but I'm not so certain. Miami. Okay, we all know Eric Spoelstra. He's going to work up some magic to come up with some new defensive scheme to try and stop him. But there's so many guys. And even if you want to stop them on the top-heavy level, there's still going to be spacing and shooters out there. Milwaukee. You want to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks? Brook Lopez is going to be out there. Okay, that's fine. You got DeAndre Jordan, whatever you want to do. But they can go small ball on them dudes. Giannis, KD. Okay, bye-bye, Giannis. I mean, there it is. So what's going to happen? Their pathway, I hate to say easy because you got to put in the work, of course. But there is a path of least resistance coming out the East. Now out the West, everybody got to go at it, see what the Lakers do again, see what the Clippers can do and achieve, if not overachieve, based on what they've done the last few years. I just don't see the hurdles in front of this team, man. I get the chemistry argument, except it's more a perception than a reality right now.
The reason I think it is in reality, and it's funny because you're arguing basketball, I'm arguing mine. You're arguing talent, I'm arguing psychologically and philosophically. The reason I think that it's a bigger issue is this. Marcellus, Kyrie didn't want to get sunned by one man, LeBron James. Like, Kyrie didn't want to get sunned by one man, LeBron James.
Let's go.
So Kyrie don't want to get sunned by Bron, so he goes to Boston. Okay, get me a bat of Cleveland. Let me go be that dude. Okay, you don't really like it in Boston. Get me a bat of Boston. Let me go with KD because KD is my dog. Well, now you about to get sunned by two dudes in KD and Harden. Because Kyrie, we always argue, you know, the best handles we've ever seen. It's like a yo-yo with him in the basketball. I get all that.
Real talk.
But James Harden won 3 straight scoring MVPs.
And KD did.
And KD won 4 out of 5 scoring titles. Collectively, between Harden and KD, that's 7 out of the last 11 scoring titles. Kyrie, you're incredibly talented, but without LeBron James...
Oh, don't you...
Look, I'm not making up the news. I'm simply reporting it. Without LeBron James, Kyrie ain't really done all that much. James Harden, he's won scoring titles. KD won Finals MVP and scoring titles. Kyrie Irving has hit big shots.
So what's next? Without Clay, Steph, you haven't... Like,
no, so what's next is this.
What?
Kyrie didn't want to get sunned by Bron. Now you about to get sunned by 2 people, and you think that's going to work, big dog?
Well, I think it's going to work because you're not respecting their maturation process. You're not respecting their basketball IQ. You're not even respecting their maturity levels.
What maturity? What maturity has James Harden shown you, Marcellus Wiley, the last month?
He got what he wanted, and I didn't agree with the way he went about it. But his maturity, he's a leader. He's a scorer. He's a baller.
He'll lead you to a strip club.
No. I've actually been one. Make it hurricane. Okay, let me get out of my old issues that I used to have. Don't take me back to that life. James Harden, he was in a position with Chris Paul before the hamstring, in a position to really make it to the finals over Golden
Yes,
State.
sir.
We saw that, right?
Yes, sir.
The slights on James Harden get exaggerated based on likability sometimes. But I look at this team as a collective, and I use the old adage: a fool learns from his own mistakes, but a wise man learns from others.
Talk about it.
Guess what?
Yes,
If I
sir.
saw the Miami Heat, the only reason why they really didn't achieve all that they could have achieved 4 straight championships is because of chemistry. Guess what? These 3 dudes, especially KD as the leader, he's not a problem, is sitting there like, yo, we're going to be smarter than that, bruh. We know what snipes big threes. The only thing that snipes a big 3 with this talent level, with this disparity in scoring, is chemistry.
Correct.
So all we need to
Correct.
do, we don't have to have 6 classes for our high school semester. We need 1 class.
Sure.
Chemistry.
Sure.
Go to chemistry class. They're already friends, former teammates. They can make this work.
This sounds great, but Marcellus,
It's supposed to.
how you gonna convince Kyrie to go to class when you can't convince him to go to practice? You can't convince Kyrie
Wait
that
a
the
minute.
earth is flat or round.
Wait a
You
minute.
can't convince Kyrie of nothing. How you gonna convince Kyrie, hey, look, Kyrie, we can win a chip if we just focus on our chemistry. But where's Kyrie right now? I don't know. I don't even know if Steve Nash, the head coach, knows.
No, he
I
doesn't.
know you don't know.
No, I
don't
don't.
nobody know where Kyrie is.
That's
so
a problem.
how in the world are you gonna convince him of that? But then the other
But
thing
is that your only argument? Because what if Kyrie shows up today? Acho, you want to rewind this take?
even if Kyrie shows up, the issue at hand, the Brooklyn Nets might be better off without Kyrie showing up. Because let's talk, you're so smart, and that's why I love talking on this show with you, because I would lose some people. Some people are like, Acho, what are you talking about? You're so smart.
Acho, you are.
I love it. I love it. Fishing returns. I'm going to
true,
break this down very
true,
simply for y'all.
true.
More input typically means more output. So I get Kevin Durant, more output, we are better. I get Kyrie Irving, more output, we are better. I get James Harden, more output, we are better. Law of diminishing returns. Typically a return, input equals output. But diminishing returns means eventually an input will no longer equal additional output. It will actually be a negative factor. So you get Kevin Durant. You get Kyrie Irving, but the law of diminishing returns says those returns will diminish. Eventually, one of those additive factors will not be an addition, and it instead will be a subtraction.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Just because Kyrie show up with KD, with James Harden, does not mean everything will be better. The Nets might actually be better off with just 2 of the 3 if we being real.
Yeah, well, I just saw the Golden State Warriors a few years ago have a big 3 and break the law of diminishing returns. Because when Steph said hello, Clay, and then Clay said hello, KD, it was a wrap for the NBA until the injuries took over. Chemistry issues or not. Acho, I would love to have this take again when Kyrie Irving shows up.